About how long, I think you mentioned a while ago, this is kind of material that developed over the years, but do you have a ballpark how long it took to develop it? Was it a 20-year journey, kind of compiling this, putting it together, or?
Yes, a little here, a little there. When I actually sat down, it took about a year to pull the material together, all of it together.
Hmm.
But the lessons I preached, like I say, over a period of 20 years, and I can trace that back that far. But obviously, as the old saying goes, if you can't come up with a new sermon, come up with a new audience.
Hmm.
And so I had used that same sermon many times before, but I had, like every other preacher, I had added a little here, added a little there. And over time, it got to the point where I could literally preach it as a series instead of just as a lesson.
Hmm.
But by the time I reached when I reached that point, then when Nancy urged me to write it up, I had a lot of material in front of me already that I could work from. And actually, there are 19 chapters, as I recall, not 13. Most of the others all have 13, but this one ended up with 19 for some reason or another. But they're very short chapters. Each of them is fairly brief. But the point being that over that period of time, I had already pulled all this material together. It was just a matter of sitting down and putting it into chapter by chapter.
For other potential authors, generally we think of producing Bible class material. Mostly preachers are going to be doing that.
Yes.
Do you have any advice for them on compiling it, putting it together, the research, anything at all that would be helpful to them?
Yeah, probably the most important piece of advice that I could give is the one that I utilized in this particular material, which is to take the material and use it first. Use it yourself. If it works for you, it might work for somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
But if you find out that the material doesn't work for you, then probably you should go on to something else. Frankly, I think I've seen material in the past. I may have written some myself that at the end of the day, it's not really very workable. It's not employable for the task at hand. I take, for example, many times I've had people come to me and I was using written literature, and someone would say, well, I didn't want to bring this up in class, but I don't get what this guy's trying to say. I can't follow the line of thought that he's trying to, and sometimes it's rather embarrassing for me because I couldn't either.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't immediately. Sometimes I had to think about it for hours and sometimes I just had to throw up my hands and say, sorry, I don't get it either. I don't know what. We'll just go on and figure he had the best of intentions, but he didn't communicate accurately. And one of the keys, I think, and Mike Willis and I have worked together for many years in this relationship. A lot of times Mike will send me his material for me to read for him.
Mm-hmm.
And he is very humble in that if I suggest something, he always works on it and fixes that. But he knows that if he sends me something that needs to be fixed, I know it needs to be fixed.
Mm-hmm.
And a fellow needs to be humble enough to realize that second set of eyes on the material, that editor, is not something they're not trying to be damaging to you.
Mm-hmm.
They're trying to be helpful to you. Mm-hmm. If there's a point if you've left a weakness in your argument, or you've left a hole or a vacuum in some area that you have not fully explained so that the reader can grasp it, then the editor who picks it up at first will also have that difficulty. He'll say, I can't see where he's going on that. Could you clarify for me? And in every case where Mike or some other editor has said that to me, upon a second reading, I could see how that person would have a problem. And every one of us as a writer needs to be humble enough to recognize that a second set of eyes is a very good thing. And that editor's observations are almost always on point. and will be helpful, and the end product will be better than it would have been otherwise. And I've heard of cases, there's a famous story about Foy Wallace one time writing an article and sending it into one of the papers. And Foy, as you know, at several points had been an editor himself, and he sent in an article, and the editor of the paper sent back a note to him saying, would you please clarify what you meant by so-and-so in paragraph so-and-so. He became very angry and said, send me the article back. I'm not even going to publish it. And that's something that if you can't get over your personal level of ego in order to let others help you, you probably shouldn't do this sort of thing.